Hello and welcome to Forward Boldly. I'm Christine Niles. So the Father Carlos Martin story has gotten very big. Headlines stretching from across the USA to Canada, even to the United Kingdom. We'll go over them in just a little bit, but for those new to the story, I encourage you to please watch my previous episode on this from November 26, titled A Curious Incident. I've got some exclusive updates for you that have not been reported elsewhere, but are pretty significant in my opinion. So for background, in short, this involves the well-known exorcist Father Carlos Martins. He's host of the wildly successful Exorcist Files podcast series. It's had millions of downloads. It's a series that I would recommend to anyone because of its catechetical value. And he also heads the nonprofit Treasures of the Church, which, stores thousands of relics. And he was, at the time, hosting an extremely popular and well-attended national tour of a relic of St. Jude, the arm of St. Jude. And there were reported some miraculous cures and healings during some of these parish visits. During one of the parish stops on this tour at Queen of Apostles Parish in Joliet, Illinois, Father Martins was accused of having taken a strand of a female student's hair. I believe she was around 12 years old, and placed it in his mouth as part of a joke about flossing his teeth with her hair. He absolutely denies these allegations. Now, he's also accused of sitting in the pew behind this girl and her friend and growling. Now, he also categorically denies this allegation. STELLA Mars Media was the first to obtain and publish the criminal complaint against Father Martins. In fact, we learned about it before Father Martin's own team knew about it. And the reason I know that is because I contacted Father Martin's team and asked them to give comment, and they said this was the first that they heard about it. Here's the official charge. Defendant knowingly, without legal justification, by any means, made physical contact of an insulting or provoking nature with I.K., a minor, in that said defendant placed the hair of I.K. in his mouth. This is a Class A misdemeanor battery, carrying the whopping sentence of $100 if he's found guilty. I don't think that this even carries any jail time. So the first thing I want to know is, first question, how many people has the Will County State's Attorney General's office actually ever prosecuted under this statute, Class A misdemeanor battery that carries a maximum sentence of $100? With all the rapes, murders, assaults, thefts that they have to deal with in their county, and there are plenty, this is what they put their resources towards? This is what they issue press releases about? I mean, just objectively speaking, okay? Just objectively speaking, let's just assume that everything that these witnesses claim is true. And I'm not sitting here claiming that what they're saying is true. I'm just saying, let's just assume, hypothetically. How many criminals do you know who've been prosecuted for something like this, placing someone's hair in their mouth for a few seconds and doing nothing else? Because remember, the charge is only for placing hair in his mouth. Now, I do want to clarify something. This is important because people have misunderstood my stance on this entire story. As an investigative journalist, I am taking a neutral stance on this, as I must. I'm not throwing my lot in with one side or the other. I have to be impartial. I have to look at all the facts, and I have to look at all the evidence honestly, objectively, and I need to go wherever they lead me, whether I like the results or not. Anyone who knows my track record knows this is what I've consistently done in my previous investigations, which have at times garnered me the ire of Catholic groups on all sides, okay? All sides. Novus Ordo, traditionalist, left-wing, right-wing. People on all sides have gotten mad at me anytime I expose their favorite clergyman. And quite frankly, let's be honest, there's a lot of hypocrisy too, because there are some Catholic leaders out there, some podcasters, they're lauded for being, oh, you're so brave for telling the truth, for exposing Vatican corruption. But how many of them either stood by silent or, to their eternal shame, took part in attempts to discredit my investigations, which exposed serious clergy abuse in traditionalist circles, whether it's the SSPX or the FSSP or any other more traditionalist group. Total double standard. But I've already gotten into that in other videos. But here's an instance of just taking the facts where they lead me to a difficult conclusion. It was actually painful for me, in spite of the lies that were spread about me. It was actually painful for me to report on the case of Father James Jackson. He was a member of the priestly fraternity of St. Peter, a traditionalist group. As we know, they offer the traditional Latin Mass, and the Holy Father has given them an exemption to Traditionis Custodes. They are allowed to continue their apostolate of offering the traditional Latin Mass because that is their particular charism. Father James Jackson was considered by many a very holy priest. He was also rector of Our Lady of Guadalupe Seminary here in North America. So clearly considered very holy, very upright, because he was put in charge of the care, the formation of souls, seminarians, future priests. After 2 long years of denying guilt, over being arrested for child porn and the worst, involving infants. After 2 years of denying guilt, Father Jackson eventually pled guilty to child porn, and now he's serving out his prison sentence. But before he pled guilty, people absolutely threw their lot in with him. They absolutely refused to believe that he could be guilty of this at all. They said this is entirely contrary to his character. He's not even, tech savvy. He's being framed by the feds, all this stuff. And they turned their attacks on me for simply reporting the facts and noting, objectively speaking, that the facts did not look good for Father Jackson. And yes, I did say, this doesn't look good. He's likely guilty. I never actually pronounced him guilty, but I said, this just doesn't look good. And there is literally no evidence whatsoever that he's being set up by the feds. There's no evidence at all. This is all speculation. And people got so angry at me for pointing that out. And they immediately said, oh, you want him to be guilty. You're throwing him under the bus. He's a holy priest. You hate trads. This is an attack on traditionalism. It was just completely outrageous. They were bending over backwards, doing mental gymnastics, trying to exonerate Father Jackson, while attacking me, the one who was reporting on it, even concocting lies that I reveled in exposing this priest, that I was an enemy of traditionalism, that I had a vendetta against traditionalism and trad clergy. Utterly outrageous, demonstrably false claims, especially considering I had attended the FSSP for years. That's where my family went. My children were baptized by FSSP priests. I have financially contributed to the FSSP. I count FSSP priests among my friends. So it was actually painful for me, whether people want to believe me or not. But I said it at the time, I'm saying it again. It was difficult for me to have to report on the truth of the Father Jackson case because I didn't really want it to be true. Nobody wants that sort of thing to be true, especially about an FSSP priest who was rector of their seminary in charge of the formation of souls. But that didn't prevent me from reporting the facts. Well, everybody else, almost everybody else, was engaging in wild speculation, taking firm sides, attacking me. Now, I was eventually vindicated. In fact, pretty much all my reporting on sex abuse and cover-up in the SSPX, another, issue that I've been attacked over, has been vindicated. Sane people, sane, objective people, recognize that the society has a serious problem with the way it handles clergy abuse, that there is corruption there at the highest levels, and things need to change. Whether they're going to change, I have no idea. But, my reporting has been totally vindicated. But all of this to say that I go where the facts lead me, even if it leads me to a place I don't like. Even if it requires that I expose those who are reportedly on my side, whatever that means, right or left, modernist or trad, doesn't matter. Truth is truth. So my stance with regard to this case involving Father Martins remains neutral, impartial, unbiased. I am waiting for all the facts to come in. I'm not taking one side or the other. So what do we know as of now? This is what we know. There are 3 eyewitnesses who claim that they saw something that Father vigorously denies ever happened. I'm sure his legal team is doing their own independent investigation, gathering their own witnesses to confirm father's account, which is, of course, entirely different from the 3 witnesses' accounts. So again, it's very important to let all the facts play out because this is by no means over. So I'm going to go over some of the serious inconsistencies in this story, and those inconsistencies are coming from the Joliet Police Department. But before we do that, just a quick note to remind you that the most pro-life way to buy or sell a home is through Real Estate for Life. I've used them twice, once to buy a home, once to sell a home. They paired me with a faith-based realtor who gave a cut of their commission to the pro-life charity of my choice. And none of it cost me anything extra. Just go to realestateforlife.org, that is realestateforlife.org, to learn more. And please remember to tell them Christine Niles sent you, because when you support our sponsors, you support us and our crucial work. So, as I was saying, the story has gotten big. It's even featured in the New York Post. Here's the headline: Renowned priest with exorcism podcast accused of using 13-year-old girl's hair as floss at church event. So many headlines from Detroit to Chicago to Boston, Cleveland, all over. It has even reached across the pond, with the British paper The Daily Mail publishing this headline: Michigan priest with exorcism podcast growled and used 13-year-old girl's hair as floss, say cops. The Joliet Police Department issued a public statement saying that Martins was arrested and charged with battery. Here's the problem. Father Martins was never arrested. The arrest warrant was actually quashed by the judge at the request of father's attorney. This is straight from the court docket. I'll read it to you. Quote, people of the state present by Madison Dubeck. Defendant present and by attorney Patrick Keneally. Matter comes on for defendant's motion to quash warrant. Motion is granted. Warrant is ordered quashed and recalled. That's the arrest warrant. It's quashed and it's recalled. Defendant's pretrial release conditions are modified to reside in Michigan and no contact with victim, alleged victim. Motion of the defendant, case is continued for pretrial. Defendant's presence is waived. Next court date. So that next court date is actually February 24th. It's the pretrial hearing, and Father Martins does not have to be there. Defendant to surrender to local police department for processing. See order signed. So he was not arrested. The arrest warrant was quashed. But the police issued a statement, Joliet Police Department issued a statement falsely claiming he was arrested. And based on that police statement, headlines exploded everywhere, literally all over the world, claiming he was arrested. As far as I'm concerned, Father Martins has a very strong case for defamation. Regardless of what you think about him or this case, the Joliet Police Department issued a public statement that was utterly false. And it led to many false headlines around the world, ruining his reputation. That's a strong case for defamation right there. So just take a look at some of these headlines. People magazine. Exorcist priest arrested after allegedly pulling out a teen girl's hair and using it as floss. That's People magazine. The Boston Times. Detroit priest Father Carlos Martins arrested for inappropriate behavior with teenage girl. Detroit, Michigan's Local 12. Exorcist priest arrested for allegedly pulling teen girl's hair and using it to floss. Cleveland, Ohio's Fox 8. Exorcist priest arrested after allegedly pulling out teen's hair using it as floss. Canada, Ottawa, WSPY. Michigan priest arrested after investigation into alleged battery at Joliet Church. Let's go overseas. The UK's Daily Mail. Detroit priest arrested for committing disgusting act against girl in full view of tour. Allegedly. These people keep forgetting to insert that word. Now, some other inconsistencies that are very significant. The police, through its public information officer, Sergeant Dwayne English, issued a statement claiming, quote, a full investigation of this incident was completed by detectives, and the findings were submitted to the Will County State's Attorney Office for their review. Following this review, they approved a charge of 1 count of misdemeanor battery. Like I said, Sergeant Dwayne English is the public information officer for the Joliet Police Department. He issued this statement. He is the one who has consistently refused my FOIA requests for the investigative file on Father Martins. This is important. His last communication to me was on January 21st, again rejecting my FOIA request. And all I wanted was the police report, the initial police report. That's all I wanted. I didn't need the entire file because he'd already rejected that. So I said, can I just have the initial police report? That's it. He denied that request. And these were the reasons that he gave me, and I'm quoting directly from the email that he sent me. Quote, this case remains under active investigation as detectives have yet to interview the suspect and additional witnesses. Releasing records regarding this investigation would interfere with the willingness of a witness to cooperate with the investigation and would also reveal pertinent information to the suspect as to the evidence being brought against them in a possible prosecution of the case. Close quote. Detectives have yet to interview the suspect and additional witnesses. That is still the case. As far as I know, they have never interviewed Father Martins, the very suspect in this case. They have never interviewed him, and they have yet to interview additional witnesses. Yet, this is what Sergeant English told media after the battery charges were made public. Quote, a full investigation of this incident was completed by detectives, and the findings were submitted to the Will County State's Attorney's Office for their review. This is my question. How can you conduct a full investigation without interviewing the very suspect in question, without interviewing additional witnesses? How can you do that? Something is not adding up. Clearly, a full investigation was not conducted because they didn't interview these key individuals. Now, while the Joliet Police Department denied my FOIA request, the Will County State's Attorney General, who took over the investigation last year, as they noted, they granted my request. And they gave me what they believed to be the complete police investigative file, complete with the interviews with some of the witnesses. Now, how do I know this? Because I emailed the State Attorney General's office and I asked them, is this a complete file of all the witnesses interviewed so far? And this was the response from Assistant State Attorney General Kevin Myers. Quote, these are the police reports in our possession per your request. These are the police reports in our possession per your request. I wrote them back and I said, did they make you know that this was actually not a completed investigation? Did they let you know that they had not yet interviewed the suspect? Did they let you know that they had not interviewed additional witnesses? No response. So that investigative file that I received revealed that 3 students total claimed to be eyewitnesses to this alleged event. So you have the girl in question with the hair and 2 of her friends. So they claim that as they're waiting in line in the back of the church to view the St. Jude relic, not in front of 200 people, but in the back of the church where kind of, I guess, more private, they claim that they saw Father come up and start making jokes, and that he joked with this female student about her hair, talking about his baldness, comparing it to her hair, asking her, have you ever flossed your teeth with your hair? And according to the students, he then took a piece of her hair, placed it in his mouth, and started flossing with it. Of course, again, like I said, he categorically denies that that ever happened. He admits that he did pick up her hair as part of the joke, but then dropped it. Now, another claim that's very odd is the female student in question claimed, so she sat down, a friend of hers sat down with her, and that Father sat behind them in the pew and then started growling. And then he looked as if he were in a trance-like state. And they didn't say that they felt scared, they just thought it was weird. Now, it's just all very odd. I don't know what to make of any of this. Father, like I said, categorically denies all of it. And I'm sure that his team is working hard behind the scenes, doing their own investigation, gathering their own witnesses. My understanding is, they're fighting this. I think they're going to take this to trial. Father is very likely going to want to take the stand and tell his side of things and call witnesses to corroborate his side of the story, his account. Another inconsistency I want to point out. The police investigative file claims that there were no additional witnesses, no other witnesses to this alleged incident of him putting the girl's hair in his mouth. But as I read to you, the police emailed me telling me they were still in the process of interviewing additional witnesses. So which is it? Are there no additional witnesses or there are additional witnesses? Which is it? There are two different stories being told. And like I said, I'm sure Father's team is gathering their own witnesses to corroborate this account, because if you recall, last November, I obtained the attorney demand letter sent to the Pillar, Stella Maris Media. We were the first to publish this demand letter that was sent to the Pillar. The Pillar, of course, is the Catholic organization that first broke the story about Father Martins and used the language that he was accused of, quote, inappropriate conduct with children. Later on, they inserted the word alleged inappropriate conduct with children after they got the demand letter claiming that they committed defamation against Father. Now that wording, before anybody knew what was going on, nobody knew at all what was happening. All they saw was inappropriate conduct with children. That wording naturally led to a firestorm of online commentary speculating, wrongly, that Father sexually abused a minor. I mean, what else is your mind going to go to when you hear the language that says a priest is being investigated by police for inappropriate conduct with children? So Father's attorney, Marcella Burke, sent the Pillar a demand letter explaining exactly what happened and why the allegation of inappropriate conduct with children was inappropriate language to use in this case. So she explained that this incident did not take place in some private corner of the church, but in fact in front of 200 people, including teachers, parents, and priests, and that he was engaging in brief chit-chat with the students before he gave a talk on the St. Jude relic. I'm going to read directly from her letter. Quote, during his conversation with the older students, he made a comment to a student about her long hair, remarking, "You and I have almost the same hairstyle," a comment met with giggles. He then remarked that he also once had long hair like hers, and he joked he would floss my teeth with it. Again, his comment was met with laughter. He then asked the student, "Have you ever flossed with your hair?" Laughing, she shook her head no. He then said, "Well, you have the perfect length for it," as he lifted up a lock from her shoulders to show her its length. She giggled along with the others. So then, from that account, she goes home, tells her dad what happens. He flies into a rage and reports the incident to police. Police conducted an initial investigation. They closed the investigation, finding no wrongdoing. The Pillar publishes its article, apparently, leading to all sorts of uproar. And the father apparently calls up police again and insists on charging him with battery. And the police reopen the investigation. So a lot of questions remain in this case. It's not an open and shut case. Why the inconsistencies in the police communications? Why did they hand over the investigation to the Attorney General's office, giving them the impression that their investigation was complete when it clearly was not complete? Why? Why did they issue a statement saying that Father was arrested when he was not arrested? They would have known that he wasn't arrested. They would have known that. Why did they issue a statement that he was, leading to these explosive headlines here and across the Atlantic? Is there a bad actor in the Joliet Police Department that has it out for Father Martins? That's a legitimate question to ask. Why would the Will County State's Attorney General's office choose to prosecute this case in particular, which, like I said, carries a maximum penalty of $100? Why are they devoting their time and money and resources to a misdemeanor when they have so many serious and heinous crimes to prosecute? Is there a bad actor in the Attorney General's office that has it out for Father Martins, or maybe has it out for Catholic priests? I don't know. Nothing here makes sense. Nothing here makes sense. Now, if you have any questions or comments or tips, if perhaps you were at the Father Martins event, you witnessed anything, please feel free to write me. My email address is stellamaris@stellamaris.media. That's stellamaris@stellamaris.media. I would love to hear from you. Like I said, I have to remain neutral on all this, but there are questions. There are serious questions that need to be answered. And I've already sent some of my questions to the Joliet Police Department and the Attorney General's office, and they're not responding. Again, stellamaris@stellamaris.media. So in the meantime, please pray for all the parties involved. I'm sure that it's rough going for everybody involved here. For the girl and her family, I'm sure it's rough going for Father Martin's. Absolutely rough going for him right now, a tremendous trial that he's under. Please pray for everybody involved. And please pray that the truth would come out, that the truth would be exposed, whatever it is. And again, I would caution against engaging in rash judgment. Marcella Burke put out a statement reminding Catholics, rash judgment, quoting from the Catechism, rash judgment is a sin. And it's leaping to conclusions and assuming kind of the worst about somebody before all the facts are out. And all the facts are not out at all. Because like I said, there are two different accounts going on here. Both of them cannot be true. And the most charitable interpretation is that people are misremembering the facts. Okay, that's the most charitable interpretation, is one side or the other is misremembering the facts. A worse possibility is that somebody's lying. Either the students who claim to be witnesses to this, putting the hair in the mouth are lying, or Father Martins is lying. And as an investigative journalist, my stance in this has to be neutral. I can't be taking sides regardless of my personal affinity to one party or the other. Just with my investigative journalist cap on, I have to take a neutral stance and consider all possibilities. Somebody's lying here. Something's not adding up. But objectively speaking, there are irregularities in this investigation already. There are irregularities. There are false statements coming out from the Joliet Police Department claiming he was arrested. Inconsistent statements from the Joliet Police Department saying, on the one hand, there are no additional witnesses. On the other hand, there are additional witnesses. And then, of course, the Attorney General's office choosing to prosecute, in reality, something that anybody can admit objectively is an extremely minor thing compared to murder and theft and sexual assault and rape and all the other things that they usually go after. Because I don't know if people understand the way that prosecutors work. Prosecutors don't go after every single case that's recommended to them. The police open an investigation, whatever it might be, and then they either close the investigation on their own, claiming that there's not enough evidence, or they think there's enough evidence and then they pass the case on to the prosecutor's office. But that's not where it ends. The prosecutor has to make the decision whether or not to pursue the case. And lots of factors go into that decision making. One of them is, do we have sufficient evidence to obtain a prosecution? That's one of the things, because there's no point in prosecuting a case and then not having sufficient evidence to convince a jury that this person is guilty. And so they have to take that into account. Other things they take into account too is this a serious enough case? Is it worth our time, our resources, and our energy to prosecute this case? The manpower that it takes, all the hours it takes. Is it worth it to prosecute this case? Lots of different factors are taken into account before they make the decision to charge someone and prosecute. And so it's very odd that they would choose to prosecute this particular case. It is very, very odd. Like I said, lots of oddities, lots of inconsistencies, lots of questions still remaining. And I truly hope that the truth comes out. If this incident took place in front of 200 people, as Father Martins claims, then he should have little difficulty, I think, in finding people to corroborate his account. And those people could take the witness stand during trial and they could testify on his behalf. And he's either, if he can do that, if he can find witnesses to confirm his case, then I don't see how a jury can convict him, can come to a verdict of guilty. I just don't see how, unless the witnesses are somehow discredited or whatever, or lying or perjuring themselves. But again, we're not there yet. We haven't even gone to the pretrial hearing yet. Lots of things still to happen down the road. And we have two different sides here. We have one side claiming this thing. We have Father Martins categorically denying it. And please keep in mind, he can't speak on his behalf, okay? He still has to remain silent. And I find it tragic that his St. Jude tour has come to an end. He recently posted a Facebook post that the St. Jude relic tour has come to an end and that he has to return the St. Jude relic to the Vatican. That in itself I find tragic, because so many people were blessed by coming to visit this St. Jude relic. So many healings and miraculous cures reported through this. So just that in itself is so tragic that that has come to an end. And also, quite frankly, I find it tragic that this excellent series, The Exorcist Files, just truly excellent series that has such rich catechetical material, also, as far as I know, is on pause at a minimum, if not coming to an end. You know, this ministry that I have found personally so valuable is now on hold, and we don't know if it's permanent. I mean, it's just, the whole thing is tragic all around. That's why we really need to pray for Father, for this girl, her family, just everybody involved, but also for the police involved in investigating this case, for the Attorney General's office. Pray for vindication of the truth, or whatever it might be. All right, thank you so much for watching and listening, and in the words of Saint Joan of Arc, in God's name, forward, boldly.